Hi everyone, and welcome to my weekly series where I analyze the script of a film that I've recently seen in the movie theater. Today we're going to talk about the movie on Chesil Beach, and I'm going to talk about why the movie did not work. There are three basic reasons why the movie didn't work for On Chesil Beach. Basically, it goes down to structure. The stakes weren't high enough, and the theme was a little bit too much in the subtext. Now I'm going to kind of go along and talk about all three of them together, so make sure you pay close attention. So let's talk about the stakes. So the movie didn't have high enough stakes because the way the movie is told in the structure of a frame story. So basically, the log line on the website for the movie on IMDb was pretty much a convoluted log line of what the movie's about. Basically what the movie's about is about a young couple, newlywed. They just got married that day, and it's about their wedding night and them trying to consummate their marriage. So that's what the movie's about in a nutshell. So the movie starts out on the honeymoon, and it cuts back and forth between them trying to consummate the marriage and have sex and the unfolding of their courtship. My opinion is that I think the film would have been better if they had told it in a more linear fashion. Now the movie is based on a book. It's based on the book by Ian McEwan, and he also got the privilege of adapting the screenplay too. I remember reading somewhere that he really felt like he was the only person who would be able to adapt the film in a way that captured the essence of the book. Well, I hate to admit, I don't know, because the movie didn't interest me enough to go back and read the book. Unlike what most people do, which is read the book first and then go see the movie, I do the opposite. That way you're never disappointed with the movie or the book. And if the movie isn't good enough, I usually don't go back and spend time reading the book because the book takes longer to read. So this film, in my opinion, did not capture my interest enough to go back and read the book. So I can't really compare to whether or not it did need to be told in this frame story setup to tell the story. Most likely that's how the book was written, so that you're there on their wedding night and then you go back into details of their courtship. The stakes weren't high enough for me because this couple didn't seem like they were together for any specific reason other than they just seemed to meet each other at a time when they were able to accept each other into their lives. They didn't, to me, have such a strong connection that they couldn't really be with anyone else. They seemed to me that they could have been with anybody else who was interested in them and been just as happy. There are some details of the relationship where Florence, the character that's played by Saoirse Ronan, does really well with her husband's family because his mom has a brain injury, and that could be one of the reasons why he wants to be with her. But he didn't really seem special enough for her to really, pick him over anybody else. She said something at one point in the movie that he wore sneakers all the time and she loved him for that. Okay, well, when people are in love, they love each other for sometimes silly reasons. But the movie, the stakes weren't high enough because the only thing at risk here, what it seems like, is whether or not they have sex or not on their wedding night. And because the rest of the movie wasn't really that compelling in terms of what the flashbacks were about, it didn't really hold the audience's interest. I didn't really hear a whole lot of engagement from the audience. They didn't really laugh too much at the parts that were supposed to be funny. And there were other people in the theater with me, but it just, the movie just didn't seem to work. The other thing about the film is that a lot of the theme of the movie was really buried underneath a lot of subtext. To make a long story short, the theme of the film was how the story is set in 1960s, the early 1960s, and it's hinted at that Florence has been sexually molested by her father, which is why she is having such a hard time consummating the marriage and allowing her husband to have sex with her, because honestly she's not really interested in sex that much. She's just doing it because she kind of knows that's what she has to do as a wife. I feel like if they had started the movie from the beginning of the courtship and then brought in scenes of the possibility of molestation by the father, we would have been more invested in the story, and we would have cared about the stakes a lot more, because it would have felt like something more was at stake than just whether or not they do it or not. And the way the story is done now is a frame story where we are there with them on the wedding night, and we keep getting interrupted when the tension is just building with them in the bedroom, and we get interrupted and taken back to the beginning of their courtship. It really doesn't help the film at all. So I talked about the stakes. I talked about the structure in terms of it being a frame story where it may have been better to tell in a more linear fashion, and I mentioned the theme as well. But the other thing I have to say about the theme is they could have had more scenes that pertained to the possibility of a molestation from the father. They didn't have too many scenes in reference to that, so you are kind of left with this feeling that the movie didn't even touch on what it actually is about. I went to the bathroom at one point during the movie when there's a scene where Florence is on a boat with her father and it's just the two of them. I came back at the end of that scene and I was like, oh, something really relevant happened when I went to the bathroom. And then it's only really touched on one other time in the movie later on when they do a few clips of Florence going to bed at night and like the shadow of her bedroom door opening and somebody coming in. And then the shadow, it looks like a male figure. So there really isn't enough of touching on that point of the story for it to feel like the theme was even really developed. So as you see, this film did not work because of the structure. The frame story technique could have been done in a linear fashion where it would have been a more straightforward story, even if they kept the subtext. The theme wasn't really illuminated because it was so far buried underneath the subtext. And that actually was a smart decision to put it so much in the subtext, because it was the early 1960s, and that's just a topic that people didn't talk about. And when it gets to the point where Florence and her husband confront each other about her not being able to consummate the marriage, it makes sense why she can't tell him the reason why she's having such a hard time, because that's just not what people did during that time period. But like I said before, they could have had more scenes that related to that. And then I talked about the structure, I talked about the theme being so much far buried underneath the subtext, and the stakes weren't high enough. If that element of the molestation had been brought in earlier into the movie and also more frequently in the movie, then the theme would have felt more relevant, but it just didn't the way that they did it this time. So like I said, I like to keep these videos to a minimum every week. I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson, or this week's illumination of the different elements of screenwriting, the stakes, the structure, and the theme, which also dealt with subtext. If you are interested in getting coaching to me, please reach out to me at my website at www.thirdpersonsomniscientproductions.com, or you can email me directly at joy.cheryl.brown@gmail.com, and I can tell you how to go further with that. And of course, as always, tune in next week. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week.